involved with a drug ring that was linked to at least 17 different murders in St. Louis.
Damn!
And their ties to the Mexican cartel made them even more dangerous. Anthony
Oh,
Jordan wasn't just killing
them boys was tied in with Pablo and them. Yeah, I'm not fucking with them boys.
people though. He took the pen. Anthony Jordan caught 2 more bodies when he killed Marquise Jones and Kiera Johnson.
Damn!
Marquise Jones and Kiera Johnson were riding around the city together and spotted some friends. Marquise and Kiera slowed down and waved at their homies. And that's when Anthony Jordan upped his strap and killed both of them. Anthony Jordan.
Y'all thought shit was sweet. Sent your ass to the upper room.
And a couple seconds after Marquise stopped his whip and talked to his homies, Anthony Jordan rolled up next to his car and lit it up with an AK-47.
Damn!
There were more homies. Lil Wick was ready for the smoke though, and he killed Joseph Shaw with a headshot.
Damn! Huh? White boy out here like John Wick, Tom Cruise, Jason Bourne. You on the shooting and hit a headshot? God damn.
Drove off.
What's going on, JB fam? We back on the video. Y'all already know what it is. Y'all already know what to do, man. Today we got a crazy ass reaction, bro. We gonna be going over the deadliest city in America, bro. St. Louis, bro. Some of y'all might think it's Chicago. Some of y'all might think it's Philly. We finna put you on game about St. Louis. But hey, y'all like, comment, subscribe. Let's hop right into the video.
Chicago is all over the news for the war in the streets, but there's a city just a couple hours away that's taking the violence to a different level.
Damn.
The streets in St. Louis are so
Man, shot
deadly,
and killed.
the cops don't even want to go down some blocks. And today, we're talking
Oh, the
about some of
white ends
craziest
got the
people
cops
down in the
scared?
city and why it's one of the most dangerous cities in America. The streets in St. Louis are full of killers, but 2 of the most savage dudes in the city were Adrian Lemons and Anthony Jordan. They were involved with a drug ring that was linked to at least 17 different murders in St. Louis. And their ties to the Mexican cartel made them even more dangerous. Anthony Jordan wasn't just killing
them boys was tied in with Pablo and them. Yeah, I'm not fucking with them boys.
people though. He took the brutal violence in St. Louis to another level and even dissed the ops he killed by taking photos of them when they were inside funeral homes. One time, he even hid a dead body that was inside a funeral home. And Anthony Jordan kept photos and videos of everything on his phone. A lot of street dudes.
Yeah, they're stupid, but damn.
Anthony
That
Jordan
boy hated the ops.
on his side and wanted to bribe the U.S. Marshals. Anthony Jordan had people in the streets terrified of him, but his homie Adrian Lemons was the one calling the shots. The drug game is huge in St. Louis, and Adrian Lemons linked up with the Mexican cartel back in 2012 and started bringing in weight from Mexico.
Oh, that shit, okay.
2 of the biggest dealers in the city, and when the feds finally busted them, they found over 60 kilos of cocaine and 1.3 million in cash. It took the feds years before they could get.
Damn! Bro, once you get to that type of level, bro, you supposed to have everybody else doing that type of work. But I'm in the penthouse and goddamn in Atlanta calling the shots on my phone. You feel me? Like, that's, you still in the hood and you up $1 million. What?
Catch Adrian Lemons and Anthony Jordan though. And while Anthony Jordan was free, he pulled the trigger on at least 9 people and left them dead in the street.
Damn, this nigga was a serial killer.
Jordan was a brutal triple murder that went down in 2008. On April 20th, 2008,
that boy big
cops
thugging.
responded to a shooting in North St. Louis and found a whip with bullet holes all over it. The car was still running when the cops pulled up, and they found the dead bodies of Al Walters.
Them boys crashed to the step. They was trying to get the hell away.
Jordan allegedly thought that Al Walters was working with the cops, so he slid on him around 2 in the morning and killed him. Al Walters was the one that Anthony Jordan wanted to take out, and Lenny Jackson and Keith Burks were just in the wrong whip at the wrong time.
Damn.
In 2010, Anthony Jordan caught 2 more bodies when he killed Marquise Jones and Kiera Johnson.
Damn!
Marquise Jones and Kiera Johnson were riding around the city together and spotted some friends. Marquise and Kiera slowed down and waved at their homies, and that's when Anthony Jordan upped his strap and killed both of them. Anthony Jordan.
Y'all thought shit was sweet. Sent your ass to the upper room.
And a couple seconds after Marquise stopped his whip and talked to his homies, Anthony Jordan rolled up next to his car and lit it up with an AK-47.
Damn!
There were more shooters in the crew, but Anthony Jordan was the one who was really tearing up the streets in St. Louis.
That boy was the Grim Reaper reincarnated.
And Anthony Clark sitting in the whip on the side of the road. Anthony Jordan used his car to block Anthony Clark from leaving. Then he dumped a bunch of rounds into Anthony Clark's whip and killed him in broad daylight. Adrian Lemons was the dude calling the shots in the crew and didn't slide as much as Anthony Jordan. But a couple months after Anthony Jordan killed Anthony Clark, Adrian Lemons and Anthony Jordan slid on a dude named Byron Earth and killed him. Anthony Jordan had already killed 2 people in the same year, but he was about to up the score again and take out 2 more. Just a few weeks
33
after he
shell
killed Robert
cases?
Ertz, Anthony Jordan sit on an op named Robert Parker and started shooting. Anthony Jordan killed Robert Parker, but then an innocent woman named Clara Walker got caught up in the situation. Anthony Jordan shoots Robert Parker on the street. Right.
Y'all out here killing grandmas and aunties, bruh. Flag on the play.
Outside of Clara Walker's crib. Clara Walker
Technical
was
foul.
watching TV with
Flagrant.
her kids.
Ejection. Get him out of here.
Shots going off. And one of the bullets that was supposed to hit Robert Parker missed him and killed Clara Walker instead.
Damn.
Cops still couldn't catch Anthony Jordan, even though he had already killed 8 people. In a few weeks after he murdered Robert Parker and Clara Walker,
who is this guy?
Anthony kept up his brutal killing spree and murdered a dude named Mikhail Yellow.
That's
Margarita.
9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Anthony Jordan both ended up getting booked by the feds, but they weren't even the most violent crew in the city. But before we get to the crazy murder going down right now, you gotta understand why St. Louis was the murder capital of America. Back in the day, St. Louis was one of the most important cities in America. There was a lot of money coming in and out of the city, and that's why the mafia got involved.
Oh,
the mafia came to St. Louis all the way back in the 1890s and started leaving bodies in the streets. The violence calmed down for a few years, but then all the Italian gangs started killing again during Prohibition. A dude named Alphonse Palazzola was one of the biggest mafia bosses in St. Louis, but the ops still murdered him.
Damn.
A dude named Vito Gianola allegedly put a bag on Alphonse Palazzola's head. And a few months after Palazzola got killed, his homie stood on Vito Gianola and shot him 37 times.
God damn!
St. Louis had a lot of problems with the mob. And it also had
St. Louis been like that since the motherfucking Great Depression.
Borman was a bank robber who ended up on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list in 1953. Borman robbed banks all over the country, but in April 1953, he ended up in St. Louis and didn't make it out alive. Borman and 3 other dudes walked into a bank on the south side of the city and tried to hold it up. At first, everything was smooth, and the crew was about to get away with $140K in cash.
Damn, that's like $1 million back
then. One of the bank tellers had tripped a silent alarm. When
Ooh.
Borman and his crew were about to leave, over 100 cops surrounded the bank. Borman and his homies started shooting at the cops and hit one in the head. Then Borman took a hostage and held a shotgun against her while he walked out of the bank. Borman shoved his hostage away though, and that's when the cops started shooting back and killed him. After Borman went down, his homie Frank Vito shot himself before the cops could get him. Eventually, less money started coming into St. Louis, and a lot of white people began leaving. The people left behind were mostly poor and black, and a lot of them were living in deadly projects where drugs were taking over. A dude named Terry Joe Cooley started running heroin through the projects in the 70s and became one of the biggest drug lords in the city. Terry Joe Cooley was driving flashy cars and wearing diamonds and fur, but all the money put a target on his back, and he ended up getting murdered in a
when you moving
situation.
like that, bro.
Terry Joe Cooley wanted to take over the whole drug game in St. Louis and run the city. He started out pushing heroin in the projects, and he was taking out everyone who got in the way. Terry Joe Cooley had a lot of power, but he was making a ton of enemies too, and that's why he got murdered.
Yeah, them enemies got cooked up if your ass too powerful.
After Terry Joe Cooley was killed, the violence in the projects got even worse. A dude named TJ Ruffin started running the same projects. TJ Ruffin had a lot of ops too, and they tried to take him out while he was sitting in the bar. 2 brothers caught TJ lacking at the bar and up their straps, but TJ took one of their guns and killed both of them on the spot.
Damn! They up following, bro, took one of the niggas' guns and then killed both of them. If that ain't some John Wick shit in real life, I don't know what the hell is. That boy is Black Tom Cruise, nigga Cruise.
That TJ Ruffin wasn't the one to play with, but the ops weren't the only ones he had to worry about. After TJ Ruffin killed the 2 brothers, the cops were all over his case. They tracked TJ down in his girlfriend's apartment and heard shots when they pulled up. TJ had already spent a lot of time in prison and tried to shoot his way out of the situation instead of getting locked up again.
That boy said, I ain't going back.
The cops threw some tear gas inside the apartment and it sparked a fire. TJ still wouldn't come out though, and after the fire was extinguished, the cops found TJ and his girlfriend's bodies inside the crib. The murder rate kept going up, and it popped off like crazy in the 80s and 90s. After
crack, baby,
started getting pushed all over St. Louis, the gang crime went to another level and turned the streets into a war zone. Gangs from LA were moving into St. Louis, and that's when a lot of people started banging Bloods and Crips. But just like in LA, the situation wasn't that simple, and it isn't just Bloods beefing with Crips. Crews usually click up with other sets around the same hood. So you have Crips who beef for Crips, Bloods that beef for Bloods, and way more gangs all over the city.
Shit crazy.
The most famous Crip from St. Louis is a rapper named 30 Deep Grimy. Grimey's whole family came from the trenches, and even his grandma repped the Crips.
Oh shit, Granny was crippin'?
The 30 Deep Grimey and his family all repped the 6 Deuce East Coast Crips. The 6 Deuce East Coast Crips started in LA, and one of the things that makes them stand out is that they wear orange instead of blue. The Crips started out in LA, but the politics in St. Louis are way different. On the West Coast, the A-Track Gangsta Crips and Rolling 60s have been at war for years.
Oh God.
But in St. Louis, they're cool with each other.
The A-Track Gangster Crips and the Rolling 60s in St. Louis are friends.
Really?
They are down there at the same game.
30 Deep Grimey popped off and became the face of drill rap in St. Louis. And it's even more brutal than the drill scene in Chicago. But the reason the music is so crazy is because of how deadly the streets are.
Them boys really living that shit.
He was just 8 years
Shit
old,
hit different.
and his
Do
little
your
brother
homework.
got killed while 30 Deep Grimey was locked up on a gun charge. Eventually, 30 Deep Grimey decided to hop in the booth, and then he dropped one of the most disrespectful tracks in the game. Back in 2019, 30 Deep Grimey dropped the track Dead Goofies and dissed a bunch of ops from all over the city. Grimey dissed his own cousin, reps an op block, and raps, "Free little DJ from your section, cause you know you a bitch. Smoking on D, clutching my XD, while I cruise through the strip." 30 Deep Grimey told Genius he still has love for his
That
cousin.
boy really living that
He
shit.
put in a lot of work for his side.
And my little cousin, he's from the outside. I love my little cousin though. Like my little cousin, he been locked up most of his life. He put a lot of work in for his side.
Then on the same track, 30 Deep Grimey dissed an op with his own mom putting out hits and raps. Them niggas telling on each other, telling free Lil Tyrell, throw him a homecoming party filled with demons and shells. Grimey was talking about a dude named Lil Tyrell who got booked for a murder back in 2013. 2 teenagers named Noah Barnes and James Moore were supposed to testify against Lil Tyrell. Then both of them ended up dead before the trial started.
Oh
There were
shit.
4 other dudes wrapped up in the murder
Them
case
boys
too.
is knocking
All
off
of
the
them walked
witnesses.
free 'cause
Ain't
the
nobody
detective
to
who was gonna
testify, case
against them ended
dismissed.
up dying from brain cancer. Then the situation took another wild turn when the news broke that Lil Tyrell's mom allegedly put the hits out on Noah Barnes and James Moore. 30 Deep Grimey was put in St. Louis.
Damn,
on the map.
mama was
Then he got booked
sliding.
on a gun charge, and the judge handed down a 7.5-year sentence right when 30 Deep Grimey was really starting to pop off. 30 Deep Grimey got so down with the gun charge. But this next rapper almost got locked up for life after he shot an op in the head. CTS Lil Wick is a white rapper from St. Louis. who's been trying to
cracker
make it
out
in
here
rap game for a
wildin'?
while. But what really got his name popping is when he got into a shootout in the middle of the street. Back in 2022,
Wait, huh?
Lil Wick and his homies were riding mini bikes around the city when they were spotted by a dude named Joseph Shaw. Joseph Shaw was going all
Crackers
the way
beefing
down
with the
street.
crackers?
Then he hit a U-turn in his Jeep and pulled up next to Lil Wick. Not there
Whoa.
sparked the issue, but Joseph Shaw, the homie who was riding with him up their strap, and started shooting at Lil Wick and his homies. Lil Wick was ready for the smoke though, and he killed Joseph Shaw with a headshot.
Damn. Huh? White boy out here like John Wick, Tom Cruise, Jason Bourne. You on the shooting and hit a headshot? God damn.
Drove off and did the race for a couple months, but then the cops tracked him down, booked him on a murder charge. Lil Wick's name was all over the news.
That's
and got more eyes on
self-defense.
his music, but the prosecutors tried to use his lyrics against him in court. They tried to make Lil Wick look bad during the trial, but the prosecutors didn't really have a case. The cops found a gun that had been fired in Joseph Shaw's whip, and when they did the autopsy on him, they found that Joseph Shaw was tweaking on meth when he got killed. Lil Wick was facing life in prison, but he beat the case and got even more momentum in the rap game. His first day out track racked up over 1 million views, and Lil Wick started getting booked on big shows like No Jumper. A lot of people don't know how crazy St. Louis really is, but Lil Wick aired it all out when he went on No Jumper. He said Glock switches are all over the city, and you can get one for like $150. There's a lot of kids running around with guns in St. Louis, and Lil Wick said he got
They be
booked for his first
13,
shooting when he was
14 out here
13.
with them
According to
switches,
Lil
them
Wick,
buttons.
an older dude in the hood started flashing his gun at him. So Lil Wick pulls out his own gun and shot the dude. CTS Lil Wick got a lot of clout in the rap game for killing the dude and beating the case. But most rappers in St. Louis end up dead or in jail before anyone outside the city even hears about them.
Yeah.
Swag Huncho was a rapper who had a group called Three Problems with his homies Lil Tay and Rello. Swag Huncho wasn't just making music though, and a lot of sources claim he had at least 5 bodies. According to rumors, Swag Huncho backdoored a few of his own homies though.
Whoa, that
That's why
shit
he ended up
not
getting killed.
gangster.
Swag Huncho allegedly set up 3 of his homies just in 2015, and people around him knew he couldn't be trusted.
Hell nah, but you gotta knock that nigga
Swag
off.
Huncho's homie Blender
Cut the
Boo
snake
took
out
him
the grass.
Swag Huncho had allegedly backdoored another dude from Blender Gang named Gino. So Blender Gang clapped back and took Swag Huncho out. A lot of people think Blender Boo was involved with Swag Huncho getting killed, and Blender Boo ended up getting murdered not too long after Swag Huncho died. There's a few famous rappers who made it out of St. Louis, like Sexy Red and Nelly. But everyone in St. Louis knows about Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half for something way crazier than their music. Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half both came up on the south side of the city and started hustling when they were
Is that nigga midget?
They're always rapping too though, and both of them hopped in the booth as teenagers. Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half repped a crew called the 5-5 Boys. They were known for always giving back to the community. They started getting some buzz in the rap game and were always loyal to St. Louis and wanted to help people out. Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half were known for flexing cash in cars, and they even opened up their own nightclub called Halftime. But what a lot of people didn't know is that they were destroying the city behind the scenes. St. Louis is a crazy problem with fentanyl and people dying from overdoses. Heroin and pills get laced with fentanyl, and it's so strong that it kills a lot of people before they can get help after starting to overdose. Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half made it look like they cared about the city, but at the same time,
but this nigga like 4'8", bro. What the hell?
They were pushing huge shipments of fentanyl into the city and leaving all kinds of people dead from overdoses. Jizzle Bucks was popping off in the rap game too though, and in 2019, he linked up with King Von for the track What's Next. Jizzle Bucks and King Von both flexed about beating murder cases, and Jizzle Bucks rapped, "Beat a murder charge, nigga, what's next? I'll just call him prepaid and collect. Now I'm home, nigga, you should know the rest." On the same track, Jizzle Bucks bragged about pushing fentanyl and raps, 3 spots, 20 daily on that crazy south. That brick of fen, $90. It came with a vouch. Shooters in my living room, won't make it past the couch. Feds was in the living room, ripping up the house. Linking up with King Von was a big win.
What the hell?
Jizzle Bucks and Lil Half also started getting into some drama in the rap game. And at one point, they allegedly put hands on 30 Deep Grimy when they ran into each other. The 5-5 Boys kept popping off.
Whoa, that boy got beat up by a midget?
There was some drama behind the scenes, and they tried to press Lil Baby when he showed up a couple hours late to a video shoot. The 5-5 Boys were moving like they were untouchable.
Ain't nobody untouchable, boy.
It all came crashing down for them. The feds started investigating Jizzle Bucks, Lil Half, and the rest of the crew. And in 2024, 15 alleged 5-5 Boys affiliates were sentenced on drug and gun charges.
Tripping.
When the cops raided the 5-5 Boys stash spots, they found over 20 guns, $120K in cash, and thousands of fentanyl pills.
Damn, them boys is cooked.
Lil Half went down for 11.
Go ahead, flip yourself up, throw a little butter, seasoning, cause you're cooked. Sizzle, deep fried.
And the rest of the crew are all going to be off the streets for years. The 5-5 Boys were one of the most powerful crews in the city because they had ties to other sets like the Young Project Goons, Team Knockout, The Strip, Pressure Gang, and more.
Damn, that wasn't cooked up with the whole city.
St. Louis. Around the same time that the 5-5 Boys are getting taken down, the cops also booked a major dealer named Freeman Whitfield on a murder charge. Whitfield was running fentanyl, cocaine, and heroin through St. Louis, and he was working with another dude named Guy Goolsby. Guy Goolsby was the plug, and Freeman Whitfield was the muscle. They were moving tons of weight in St. Louis, and Freeman Whitfield decided to take out one of their own dealers. A dude named Antonio Boyd was one of the dealers who worked for Guy Goolsby and Freeman Whitfield, and back in 2018, he got booked on drug charges. Freeman Whitfield was worried that the cops were going to flip Antonio Boyd so they could take down the whole operation.
I had to take that boy out.
Freeman Whitfield slid on Antonio Boyd and shot him to death. The feds were already watching Freeman Whitfield and Guy Goolsby, but murdering Antonio Boyd was what sparked the whole downfall. In 2020, the DEA planted an undercover.
See, bro, that's what y'all don't understand, bro. Trapping and shit be cool, bro, when you can stay out of the radar, make your bread, don't live hella flashy, boom, bam, bop. But soon as bodies start dropping, soon as blood start getting shed, bro, you're just bringing, like, if you move smart, bro, the police not gonna know what you doing, bro. If you move smart. But once bodies start dropping, bro, you're cooked. You're cooked.
Fed who bought fentanyl from Freeman Whitfield. Then they raided the group's stash houses and found 1.5 million cash, 25 kilos of cocaine, 3 kilos of fentanyl, 10 kilos of heroin, and enough guns to start a war. After the investigation was over,
Oh, you brothers are going down for life. 1.5 million. Why do y'all keep all y'all money in the same spot? But that makes no sense, bro. You supposed to split that shit up.
Crosby got hit with 150 months in prison and will probably come home in a few years. But Freeman Whitfield had the murder charge and got sentenced to life plus 10 years.
Damn.
The drug game brought all kinds of violence to St. Louis. But another thing that made the streets turn up was when Michael Brown was murdered by the police back in 2014. Michael Brown, aka Big Mike, got into a fight with a cop named Darren Wilson in a St. Louis suburb called Ferguson. It started when Mike Brown allegedly reached into a cop car that Darren Wilson was in, and 2 shots ended up going off. Mike Brown and his homie ran off. Then Darren Wilson chased Mike Brown and ended up killing him. A lot of people thought Darren Wilson murdered Mike Brown, even though he was putting his hands up and asked Darren Wilson to not shoot. And the killing sparked a huge protest in Ferguson. People were rioting in the streets like crazy because they thought the cops killed Mike Brown for no reason. So St. Louis had to send almost all their police to Ferguson so they could try and control the situation. But while the cops were all in Ferguson dealing with the protests and riots, the rest of the city turned up even more. 30 Deep Grimy said, you can go start on your ops on the west side, downtown, or wherever else, because all the cops were in Ferguson and couldn't respond to any shootings in the rest of the city.
You can do anything in the city because everybody was in Ferguson County at the time, fucking it up. So you can go downtown and kill your enemy. Go kill your enemy on the west side. Police ain't coming because all the fucking police is in Ferguson.
That is smart, bro.
Right now, or kill anybody you want to kill because everybody was in Ferguson at the time.
A lot of cities have problems with gang violence, but St. Louis also has a wild issue with gangs from Bosnia, and it led to one of the most brutal murders in the city. Bosnia is a tiny country in Europe, and most people have no idea that it has ties to St. Louis. Back in the 90s, Bosnia was involved in a crazy war, and a lot of Bosnians left the country so they wouldn't get killed. The Bosnians started coming to St. Louis because it was easy to find jobs and the rent was cheap. And now St. Louis has the largest number of Bosnians outside of Europe. Most of them were just trying to survive, but some of the Bosnians got active in the trenches too. And in 2014, a Bosnian American named Samir Bergic was brutally beaten to death with hammers by 4 teenagers. At first,
they beat that boy to death with hammers? Bob the Builder ass death.
Some people thought it was a hate crime because he was a white Bosnian, and the teenagers who killed him were all black and Latino. It was one of the most violent murders in the city. Now we're going to break down the stories from St. Louis that are so brutal that most people don't even want to hear about them. Back in 2016, a woman named Pam Hupp called the cops and said that a dude named Louis Gumpenberger tried to kidnap her and put a knife to her throat. When the cops rode up to Pam's house, they found Louis Gumpenberger dead inside Pam's house, and she told them that she had to shoot Louis because he came at her like a madman. At first it looked like a simple self-defense case, but then a week after it went down, Pam Hupp got hit with the murder charge. When the cops came to pick her up, Pam asked to use the bathroom before they put her in cuffs. The cops let her go to the bathroom, and that's when Pam tried to slice her own neck and wrist open with a ballpoint pen.
What the
hell? Turned out Pam wasn't some innocent woman who got attacked. She was actually a brutal murderer who had already killed her mom and best friend. Pam stabbed her best friend 55 times and then blamed it on her friend's husband. And she also pushed her own mom off of a balcony so she can get insurance money. Pam Hupp's case was
this bitch crazy as hell.
Killed over 20 women. Maury Travis came up in St. Louis and was living in Ferguson when the cops arrested him for killing Alicia Greenway and Betty James. When the cops raided his crib, they also found a tape that showed Maury Travis torturing and murdering one of the women. But that was only the beginning of the story. It turned out that Maury Travis was a serial killer who had been picking up prostitutes and murdering them. The body started turning up in
the Criminal Minds, NCIS, am I fucking listening to?
Victims. After the story came out, Maury Travis sent them a letter and gave a map to where the cops could find another body. In the letter, Maury Travis claimed he had killed 17 women, but some people think his body count was even higher than that. We'll never know how many people he really killed though, because Maury Travis killed himself in jail before his trial could start. St. Louis used to be the murder capital of America, but the violence is actually starting to slow down a little bit. In 2022, the FBI reported that violent crime in the city was lower than it had been in 10 years. But then just 1 year later, the crime rate went up again, and it's still one of the deadliest cities in the country.
Spoke too soon.
Between the gangs, the serial killers, and other random murderers, St. Louis is the kind of...
Man, that's about the end of the video, bro. I ain't gonna lie, St. Louis right to Chicago, bro. That shit, real life, the deadliest city in America. Bro. You know where I won't be vacationing to? I'm not going to Missouri, fucking period. Like, I be forgetting that's even a damn state. No offense to anybody who from Missouri who watching this shit, but You won't catch me there on bro. But hey man, if y'all to the video, I appreciate y'all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, roll to 1,000 subscribers. Tell me to my second reaction channel, JBsiah 2, link in the description. Tell me to my clothing brand, JungleBredClothing, link in the description. But y'all start over, get you some money. All love, JBsiah, we out.